Okay, so get this. Today we're diving into the world of mineralogy. I always thought it was just about rocks, but the stuff you sent over, wow, it's way more than that.
Right, like we're talking about the history of the planet, all hidden in these
It's
minerals.
like time travel, but with rocks instead of a TARDIS. So, where do we even start with all this material? We've got career guides, articles.
It's like opening a geode, right? Each piece tells a story. But maybe the best place to begin is with what a mineralogist actually does.
Yeah, good point. Because I'll be honest, I pictured someone stuck in a lab with a microscope all day.
Well, there's definitely some of that, but it's way more dynamic. Think field work, high-tech analysis, even collaborating with industries like mining.
Oh, field work. Tell me that's as cool as it sounds. I'm picturing like Indiana Jones, but with rock hammers instead of whips.
Well, hold your horses. It's not always glamorous. We're talking remote locations, demanding conditions, long hours. Think more gritty scientist than action hero.
Okay, so maybe less whip wielding, more like extreme science. Still pretty cool. But what about the tech side? You mentioned some high-tech analysis.
Oh, yeah. We've got things like X-ray diffraction. Imagine shining a super-powered light through a mineral, and it basically lets you map out the atoms inside.
Wait, hold up. We can see atoms now. That's insane.
Pretty much. It's how we understand minerals' properties and figure out how it can be used.
Okay, now that's what I call applied science. So it's not just about identifying rocks, it's about understanding how they shape our world.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting because suddenly you're talking about things like sustainability, resource management.
And that's where a tool like RoleCatcher comes in, right?
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to love rocks, it's another to actually land a job in this field.
And that's what's cool about RoleCatcher. It uses AI to analyze what employers are looking for, then helps you tailor your resume and even practice interview questions.
It's like having a secret weapon for the job hunt. And speaking of skills, the guide mentioned some interesting ones, obviously scientific knowledge, but also stuff like active listening, critical thinking.
Those soft skills are huge, and not just in mineralogy. In a world drowning in information, being able to analyze, communicate clearly, those are the skills that set you apart.
Makes sense. So you've got the passion, the skills. Now let's talk career path. The guide mentioned different stages from entry level all the way up to like rock star scientist, right?
Something like that. But yeah, each stage comes with new challenges, more responsibility. You might start assisting senior scientists, then eventually lead your own research projects.
I was looking at those example profiles in the guide, super helpful. You can really see how the skills you learn early on, they build towards those bigger roles.
And don't underestimate the power of mentorship, finding those people who can guide you along the way. That's crucial in any field, but especially in something as specialized as this.
Right, because it's like you might love rocks, but you need someone to show you how to actually turn that into a career. Speaking of which, I was intrigued by the alternative titles section: oceanographer, geologist.
See, it's a whole world of possibilities. Even if mineralogy itself isn't your thing, there are all these related fields that might spark your interest.
It's like the more we dig into this, the more we realize how much there is to uncover. But there's one thing that's been on my mind.
Shoot.
Well, we've talked about the adventure, the tech, the career stuff, but what about the ethical side? We're talking about extracting resources, potentially impacting the environment.
You've hit on something really important, and honestly, it's something every aspiring mineralogist has to grapple with. The guide touches on it, but it's a much bigger conversation.
Right, because it's one thing to study minerals, but what about the responsibility that comes with that knowledge?
Exactly. And that's something I think we should explore further. It's like you don't choose mineralogy, it chooses you. You're drawn to the science, but then bam, you realize it's about way more than rocks. It's about the future of the planet.
Whoa, deep thoughts. It reminds me of that example in the guide about the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs. Mineralogists helped figure that out, right?
Yeah, they analyzed rock layers, found traces of elements that are super rare on Earth, but common in asteroids. It's like cosmic detective work.
That's wow. So we're not just talking about what minerals are, but like using them to piece together the history of the planet.
And beyond. Don't forget those asteroids, those came from space. So mineralogy has got this whole cosmic angle too.
My head's spinning. But okay, back to the tech stuff for a sec. You mentioned X-ray diffraction. I gotta know more about how that works.
Okay, so atoms in a crystal, they're not just jumbled up, they're in a specific pattern, like a grid almost.
Right, right. I'm picturing it.
So when you shoot X-rays through it, they diffract, they scatter,
Yeah.
based on that pattern. And by analyzing that scatter, we can figure out the exact arrangement of the atoms.
So it's like each mineral has its own atomic fingerprint.
Exactly. And that fingerprint tells us everything about its properties, how it behaves, what we can use it for.
That's incredible. It's like suddenly we understand these minerals on a whole new level. And speaking of understanding, the guide emphasized continuous learning in this field. Why is that so important?
Well, think about it. New discoveries all the time, tech's always improving. You can't just learn it once and be done.
Right, it's always evolving.
Exactly. Conferences, workshops, new research papers, it never stops.
I was going to say, the guide mentioned all that, and it sounds kind of intense, but also really exciting.
Oh, it is. It's not just about keeping up. It's about connecting with other scientists, sharing ideas, getting inspired. That's how breakthroughs happen.
It's like a community, all driven by this shared passion for minerals.
You got it. And that's where mentorship comes in. Having those experienced folks to guide you, it's invaluable.
Yeah, the guide talked about that too, finding mentors, learning the ropes, and then eventually you pass that knowledge on, you become the mentor.
It's the circle of science.
Yeah.
But yeah, the career progression, it's all there in the guide, all those different stages, building your skills over time.
Those example profiles were eye-opening. You can really visualize yourself climbing that ladder from entry level up to leading research teams.
And at every stage, there's that same sense of discovery, that drive to uncover the secrets hidden in these minerals.
And that brings us back to something we touched on earlier, this idea of ethical responsibility. We're not just uncovering secrets, we're potentially impacting the planet in a big way.
Absolutely. And that's something I think a lot of people don't realize about this field. It's not just about the science. It's about the choices we make, how we use that knowledge.
So it's like a mineralogist's job doesn't end in the lab or the field. It extends to the impact their work has on the world.
100%. And that's something I think we need to talk more about because it's only going to become more important as the demand for these resources grows.
It's almost like with mineralogy, we're at this crossroads, right? We need these resources, but we also need to protect the planet. How do we balance that?
That's the million-dollar question, and honestly, I don't think there's an easy answer. But that's what makes this field so important because we're talking about the future. Literally.
We're talking about the future of, well, everything. If we run out of resources or if we destroy the planet trying to get them, that's it. Game over.
Exactly. And that's why it's not just about the science anymore. It's about the ethics, the responsibility that comes with that knowledge.
So it's like you might be fascinated by minerals, but you also need to be, like, passionate about using them wisely.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's something I wish more people understood. It's not just about digging stuff up. It's about doing it in a way that's sustainable, that doesn't screw things up for future generations.
It's like that saying, we don't inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children.
Exactly. And honestly, I think that's a good place to leave it, on that note of responsibility, because that's what it all comes down to. If you're thinking about a career in mineralogy, yeah, the science is cool, the tech is amazing, but at the end of the day, it's about using that knowledge for good.
It's about being a scientist, but also a steward of the planet.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, on that note, I think we've mined all the knowledge we can for one episode.
See what you did there.
To all our listeners, thanks for bringing us on this deep dive into the world of mineralogy. Until next time, keep exploring.